Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian from Tropical Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Tuesday, June 24th. Heat wave in on the east. If you are dealing with this as well as I am, I hope that you're inside in AC or at least in the shade today, because it's the second day of mid 90 weather. I think it cools down after that. But speaking of hot, let's go right into the market. Very, very strong market. Gap up today and basically gap up and go. We were a little bit sideways there in the beginning of the day, but strong. Before I get into to all of the data for what transpired for today, risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes, not giving out any advice or recommendations. Everything that we're going over is for information purposes only. So if you're looking for a reason for the strength today, perhaps just a little bit of the overhang of the conflict that's been going on in the Middle East. Again, my opinion, don't get wrapped up in these headlines back and forth about, I opened up Twitter last night and people seemed to be frustrated about, what time the ceasefire started. And it's really not about that. And I think if you're trying to analyze that stuff, I don't know what you're doing exactly, but I think it's basically whenever there's one of these conflicts that go on, it's the same playbook over and over for the most part. Sometimes there's a curveball in there, but it's whether it's getting more heated or it's dialing down. Right. If the temperature is dialing down in terms of the conflict and about the two talking rather than fighting, it's usually a good thing. And the rest is a little bit of semantics in terms of trading. Right? We're not talking about actual events here, and I know that there's lives at risk, and that's very important. I'm just strictly talking about trading. And I mentioned in yesterday's video, as well as the last couple of weeks, pay attention to what oil's doing. That gives you a hint of whether things are getting better or they're getting worse. We know that oil basically gave back the whole gains. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but I want to make this video a little bit quicker today. We have a new closing high for the Qs, gap up over the recent consolidation and a movement out to new highs. Qs were up 1.5%. Nice to see the small caps, and I always have the micro caps on my spreadsheet too, just as like, not because I'm really trading the micro caps, but just a sense of like risk on, risk off. When you see the micro caps lead up 1.9%, you know that the market had or doesn't have to be up 1.9%, but when the micro caps are leading, it's usually a pretty good day for the market. Nice snapback by Bitcoin today, up 2.4%. Gold down 1.6%, as was crude, and the VIX was down 11% today. Best performing groups, solar had a nice end of day move. That's going to go back and forth whether or not they're including that in the budget plan about the incentives, I guess, for solar panels and that type of thing. What I was really impressed by was the semiconductors. Now, we do have a catalyst for the semiconductors for tomorrow. So let me get to let me share the screen for charts. So let me unshare, reshare window. And sorry, I have to talk my way through this because it's so many steps to do here. But we do have a catalyst, and I think that was one of the reasons why the semis were so strong today. Nvidia has their event date tomorrow, so I'm going to get to that too. We'll talk a little bit. I want to make sure I cover that, but I want to do these things in the right order. Let's go to crude first, just so I can. I know this is not exciting, but I think it just kind of just shows you, right? People were talking about, oh my God, inflation is gonna go higher. Look at it, give the whole thing back. I mean, what a complete U-turn. That is a major bearish engulfing candle for yesterday, and then follow through to the downside. So that whole move in crude given back. And again, if you've been following this rather than every single headline, I think it's been telling you everything that you need to hear for the most part. SPY. So there's the kind of move and bounce off the 20-day moving average. Yes, none of the major indices broke their 20-day moving average during this whole thing over the last couple of weeks. Just moved sideways. Remember in my my end of day video on Friday, I talked about the bad news and the good news, and I kind of make a joke because you have to do that because financial markets are a bit dry. But I said over the bad news is SPY was down 2 weeks in a row. The good news was it was only 0.5% and sideways. So just a lot of digestion. I think that said something about what we were dealing with, is that this overall market is pretty strong. And for whatever reason, there's still buyers left on the sidelines. We're also getting a little bit more dovish tones from different Fed speakers. Powell, not so much, but we've heard from a couple of Fed speakers that says, hey, if the inflation data continues to progress to the downside, then there's a chance that they're going to cut interest rates, possibly even in July. And right now, there's about a 22% chance. Last I checked, that that Fed fund futures are pricing in a interest rate cut. Now we're going to get a lot more inflation data before then, with the PCE. I believe that's on Friday that we get the PCE, what used to be called the deflator, now the price index. All right, so SPY, did not break out to new highs, but I'm not so much worried about that. I mean, that's a break above just leapfrogged above that whole area that we were digesting. Same thing with the Qs. This did make a new closing high, so you can go out, you could have a drink, tell the bartender, hey, I'm celebrating today. The Qs made a new all-time high. Hey, if that makes you happy, go ahead and do it. That's something to I would cheers to that. So that's a new closing high for the Qs. But very strong there. And like I said, up decently. Here's IWM. Look at right back into that 200-day moving average. So that didn't take long for that to get back up there, but really no major confirmation yet in IWM. I mentioned microcaps, so I might as well show that chart. The microcaps are a bit stronger than IWM, and that's a break out of the break back above the value area. So let me talk about the semis for just a second here, because I thought, when I see the semis do something like this, up 3.7% today, and also breaking out of that consolidation, notice that the price just got above the value area about a week ago, or week and a half ago, above the value area for the year, and now breaking higher. So really nice to see that. At one point, all of the names in the SMH ETF were positive. I'll have to check to see if that's how they finished. But I want to just talk about Nvidia just for a second. It's been a slower mover recently. Had a good day today, up 2.6% tomorrow. So I believe their annual general meeting starts tomorrow at 12 o'clock. And the question is this just running a little bit like we've seen Nvidia do previously? And sometimes we see this with names where there's a widely expected event. It's one of the biggest traditions on Wall Street. It's called buy the rumor, sell the news. So that could be what's going on here. I'm a little bit wary of these events with Nvidia because the last couple have been disappointments. And I think that you can find them on your charts. Number one, I think this is where they had a meeting, right? They had it was either like a developers conference. I forget what the meeting was, but it was in the beginning of January. Stock tried to break out and went back inside. And there was also the earnings event too. This is two earnings cycles ago. Tried to go higher and failed. Now a little bit better here. We gapped up, kind of came in and digested. But I'm always for the most part, that's how I normally play events. Right. Again, retail traders love to get really excited for an event and they want to bet on an event, kind of like betting on a sports event. Okay, that's fine, that you could do that, but I would also, maybe bet with the same amount of money. Usually what happens is buy the rumor, sell the news. There's a run up into an event and then it kind of there's either some type of disappointment, but I would still say, let's see what he says, let's see. And I would also say too, keep an eye on some of the companies too, because sometimes their shareholder events, like Jensen does a wonderful job at like touting other companies and how they're partnering with other companies. I love how he does that in his presentation. So, a couple names to watch. I know these are names that folks like to keep an eye on. NBIS, by the way, had a good day. Like, it's hard to complain about up 7% day, but I would say this: it did turn the corner, but didn't get above this previous high. Now, remember, I talked about these version point of controls, kind of right back into here. So that's a name that I would watch maybe tomorrow, and then also like another name that likes to move on momentum is TEM, which has been very dormant for a while. I don't have a position in either one of these things. I just kind of watch them. Just to, I want to talk a little bit about what I traded for the day. I was looking at the momentum that could happen in the what I talked about at the end of, I believe towards the end of yesterday's video, which was the uranium names. They had a good day today. I stuck with the one that I trade more, and that's SMR. But I'm going to go over the chart first of OLKO. Kind of had, I was watching OLKO. It had a great, had a nice day to it, right? But and maybe there's more upside to it. You could trade this. The bullish 80% rule is in effect. It did come from maybe a little bit lower than SMR did, for it to get into its value area for the week. So your support is 57.67, and your resistance is going to be 67.03, and that's not a bad looking candle for the day. Right, so there's your check back to the 20-day moving average. A little bit of a false breakdown, or clearing out some longs here, weekends, and a move back up here. Here's the chart of SMR. This is what I traded today. Look at that candle for the day. So I had mentioned the first time I traded SMR, not the first time, but the last time that I traded SMR, which was in here, and I thought it was acting a little bit better than OLKO then. Reminder that OLKO had a secondary, SMR did not. So very nice move, and use the value areas to trade this. And here's your move through the bottom of the value area, and that triggered the 80% rule. I put that on Twitter too, and that was my setup pre-market. I actually bought this pre-market, waiting for the open for some of these things. Sometimes you're going to be a little bit late with doing that. So these things will just kind of get off to a good start. If there's momentum in the market, which there was today. So decision area right now, 43.02. I kept on about 10%, only 10% of my position, because I was just really looking for a momentum trade for the day. And I do view these things as just, they could really move around a lot. I want to talk about one name that went down today, and a little bit about that. Circle was down 15% today, but overall, watching the 1 hour chart, here's a level for you to monitor. That's 220.43. I talked about this earlier today, and I said, well, let's see what happens when it gets down to the top of the value area. Now, this doesn't mean that this definitely has to hold. It's a point or an area of interest, right? So watch this 220.43 level, and if it breaks in there, so I have no position in this, by the way. I traded this towards the end of last week. It was a nice profitable trade for me, and I've been watching ever since. Now, if this does break into the value area and maybe kind of, creeps in here, shakes some weak hands out, then watch for a reclaim of that 220 level. And if it doesn't do that, then unfortunately, it could be traveling through this value area. So again, trading before you're even into a trade, look at, map out a scenario analysis of what you're thinking is going to happen here. My opinion, is that this may need some more time to just a flat line, consolidate, right? And that's what we saw with, if you go back to my example with OLKO and SMR, they did exactly that. They pulled back for like a few days. So let this thing, let the air come out of this a little bit. Nice to see MasterCard, by the way, on the other side of this. You could have traded MasterCard and Visa. MasterCard had a big day today. Did not, it came so far from its 200-day moving average up to the bottom of the value areas. So that's a long distance for it to go, and a little bit of rejection there for the day at the bottom of the value area. Just a couple. I'm just going to go around and just kind of go through some of these charts. How about this Netflix? Unbelievable. I've been long a trade for a while. I bought Netflix on the dip, and I sold it today. Again, maybe I'm selling a little bit early, but I like to buy dips in Netflix. Again, maybe I should have held on to a little bit of the trade there, but I just couldn't believe how much it was up this morning. And sometimes when you're watching it day by day and you see it up huge, sometimes you have, at least I do sometimes, I ring the register, and again, maybe out a little bit too quickly with this one. I know this one's I think a lot of people were happy about this move today, including myself. Robinhood up 7%. And I did take a target at the end of the day in this. I continued, when you probably hear me say that a lot in these videos. Oh, I took a target in this. Keep in mind, like, I keep adding when this name is like down 2%. And I pay attention. I'm really trying to kind of incorporate that more into my trading. When I see this stock that's in a nice uptrend, and for no particular reason, just like it did the other day, just like it did back in here, it sells. It gives you these opportunities to add a little bit. So that's why I like selling the rip and then positioning back, because it's going to, trust me, it's going to give you another day where it's going to be down 2%. And that's where I'll look to add that target back. And, of course, I want to make sure like I'm not blindly doing that, because eventually this will have more than, a half a minute pullback, with this name, because that's how it's been recently. But I'm going to keep doing that until it works. And until every time it checks back into support, look at it here, right into the bottom of the value area for the day, right into the bottom of the value area for the week, right? And a move higher. So it's buying the dip. I love to buy the dips in uptrends in names that are in defined in defined uptrends. Speaking of defined uptrend, Palantir also had a nice day today, right? It's another name that's been working in terms of buying these little dips for now. But the market has been doing this. As the market grinds up like this, that's been a great thing to be doing, is just buying these little intraday dips like that. Where did I want to go to next? Snowflake. That was a nice trade. This is a trade that I added on Friday. Sideways, sideways, sideways. 20-day moving average catches up. Nice breakout higher here up to 221. Next place for me, and I might even take the trade off, would be up this VPOC at 229. But very nice move out of nice sideways consolidation. Again, you had to be patient with this stuff. That's a long time to go sideways. It's basically all of June it went sideways, and then the break higher. But if you're sitting in that position, it never gave you a sell signal through all of that, right? Never really broke the 20-day moving average. Name that I think I talked about in yesterday's video, Oracle. Woo, nice move in Oracle. Again, my opinion is some of these strong names, especially the ones that have really strong earnings, they are not going to pull back that much, right? And that's what Oracle did, and that's why I got involved in it yesterday. And I said I would get involved in it if it checked back a little bit further, but so there's shallow dips in some of these really strong names. Speaking of shallow dips, I was mad that I did not catch this one, right? SEZL was up again huge. What helps, because sometimes you look at this chart and you're like, oh, I can't buy it up here, right? You have to be thinking about present, what it's doing and where it could go. 1 hour charts, so damn helpful, right? Here's the 1 hour chart for SEZL. Notice what happened over the last couple of weeks. So again, you don't have to look back at what it did a month ago and say, oh, geez, I wish I would have bought it a month ago, right? Think about where it's going, right? Because for the last week and a half, it actually went sideways, right? It had a nice break higher, and I traded this, and then I took profits. And unfortunately, I didn't reload here. But sideways, 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 break, and then boom, we're going, next leg higher. So these names, try to use the 1 hour chart to your advantage and say, okay, these names that have been, super hot, they are consolidating here and there. It's this consolidated for a week and a half. Dave was another one, right? This dip was a little bit more. This was a little deeper, right? And but it did come back nicely too. So there's a lot of stocks like this. I feel like I could go on for another 10 minutes about different stocks. I'll give it to the folks that have been bullish on Uber. While I haven't been able to really get my arms around going long Uber with the robo taxi. There was a nice announcement that they made a deal today with Waymo in Atlanta that propelled the stock higher today. So congrats to the longs in that space. Again, you don't have to be right about every single single stock. You're not going to be, but I give the longs the congratulatory the victory lap for this one, because hey, that's a real nice move today, up 7.5%. All right, guys, that is it for today's video. Let me just look. So I mentioned the Nvidia conference tomorrow, I believe at 12 o'clock. For tomorrow, you're not going to have too many. You got building permits, some housing data, new home sales, building permits. And then once we get, so that's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is where you're going to get that PCE number. So that's what I would be watching in terms of economics. Guys, have a great night. See you tomorrow.